Right, now for the rest of this program, we have the program, and now we're going to get the input from the spin edit, the button, to double click the button. Some of you have forgotten how to get input from a spin edit. This is your chance to learn again. So I'm going to double click the button. I need an integer because the spin edit is an integer data type. So var inum colon integer, declare variable inum as an integer data type. And then we say inum colon equals sed number dot, who says dot text? Good, you didn't put your hand up because it's dot value. Right, now the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to go through every single number from 1 to inum. And I'm so sorry for those of you who grasped this long ago. Unfortunately, it's a very big class. Not everybody's at the same level, so I have to go slow. I'm going to get a for loop counter k. So I have to have an integer k, which I'm going to use as my for loop counter to go from 1 to inum. So for k colon equals, take note there's a colon equal in the for loop statement. For k equals 1 to inum, do begin and end. Inum. Right, what are we going to do? We're going to ask if k is an even, if k mod 2, if inum mod k. The big number is inum, k is the small number going from 1 to inum, so we're going to say if inum mod k is equal to 0. That means k is a factor of inum. Guys, you have to memorize this. There's no other way. And you're going to use it a lot, all the way to grade 12 and beyond. Mod and div are very powerful operators. Why do I call them operators? Because you use them instead of divide, division sign. Multiply, divide, plus, minus, those are mathematical operators. Mod is one of them. It's like saying inum divided by k, but only displaying the remainder. That's what mod is doing. Inum div k is inum divided by k, but displaying only the whole number, not any remainder. But mod, m for remainder, m for mod. That's how I think of it. Anyway, so inum mod k equals 0. If it's 0, what do we want to do? We're going to increment a counter, and we're going to display in the rich edit. So we need a counter, so I'm going to go over here and say rcount, a counter variable. There it is. It's an integer data type. Rcount colon integer. Now, if we're going to count, meaning we're going to say rcount equals rcount plus 1. That is counting. Another way to say that is increment rcount. But obviously we can only use one of these. You decide which one you prefer. I prefer RNC. It's a procedure because it's only stating increment. There's no equal sign involved here. RNC is a procedure built in by Delphi to add 1 to an integer inside here in the brackets. So you have to have an integer in brackets. You add 1 to it. So RNC is a procedure that does that. Now we're not going to display rcount, okay? We'll display it only at the end, after everything has happened. Because inside this if statement, we are adding 1 to rcount, and that is inside our loop for k equals 1 to I num. And take note of how the begins and ends are situated. We need to be very clear about what begin and end goes with goes where. So it's very important to have indentation and so on. Well, what are we going to display? We want to display the actual factors. What will be the factor? Will it be I num or will it be k? No, I num is our big whole number. I num is not going to change. K is going to change from 1 to I num. So what do you think the factor is? It's either I num or k. K is the factor. K is changing from 1 to I num. I num is not changing at all. I know it's a bit confusing, but we've got to get used to it. I num is not going to change. K is going to change from 1. K is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I num is 6, then it'll stop at 6. I num does not change at all here. That is our stationary value. Right. We are going to display k in the rich edit. So red out dot lines dot add open brackets int to string, k goes in brackets. Take note, my comment here of R count equals R count plus 1. That's because I don't actually want to use that, because it's easier for me to type RNC and R count in brackets. The processor doesn't mind if you type capitals or not, except when you're displaying it. Right, so what happens with R count? It increases all the time. When are we going to display it? After the for loop has done its job. Do you see where begin and end of the for loop is? You could put a comment here, end of for loop. And you can put a comment on the end of here, end of if statement. You need to know where your begins and ends are matching. Remember, an end must match a begin. And I know this is maybe a bit of too easy for some of you, but there are many who actually need to be reminded of these things. It's the crux of programming, is to know what's happening in your code. So you put comments around, and when you do your pat, you have to put comments everywhere. So you need to know what's going on with your code. And we can actually say, are we going to go from 1 to I num, and this is if it's a factor, k is a factor. Okay, and then we're going to count how many factors, and we're displaying the actual factor here, displaying the factor. This is what you have to do in your pat. No jokes. You lose about 4-5 marks, I think, if you don't put comments in your code. Also, you need to make sure that you indent your statements. Take note, I've indented neatly over there so I know what's what. It's very important for programs. If you come back to your program at a later stage, you need to know what's going on. And when you write thousands and thousands of lines of code, it's very important to have notes or comments in your code. And that's what you will end up doing for your PATs in grade 12. You will write thousands and thousands of lines of code for your PAT for grade 12. Okay, now over here, we're going to display R count after the loop, because this is going to be added 1 to each time. While the loop is running, if there's a factor, we'll add 1. If there's a factor, we'll add another 1 to our count. If there's another factor, we'll add another 1 to our count. And over here, after the loop, we will display. But let's go and put in a nice space. An empty line, people. We can't have everything all squashed on top of each other. Already out, dot lines, dot add. You have to know how to create an empty line in Delphi. number of factors equals, join that to int to string I count. Just putting it on a new line so you can see. Right, now put that code in and run your program and see if it works. I'm going to stop recording now.